My name is Sarah Jamil, and what I am about to share with you is something I never imagined possible. It happened on the night of November 12th, 2018. A night that started like any other but ended with me standing before a presence so powerful, so overwhelming, that it changed everything I thought I knew about life, faith, and eternity. I was raised in a devout Muslim household in Seattle, Washington. My parents, both deeply committed to Islam, instilled in me the importance of our faith from an early age. They were strict but loving, ensuring that I follow the teachings of Islam with unwavering dedication. My days were structured around prayer, discipline, and obedience. I prayed 5 times a day, recited verses from the Quran diligently, and wore my hijab with pride, believing it was my duty as a young Muslim woman. My mother often reminded me that faith was our identity, our shield against the corruption of the world. And for the most part, I believed her. At school, however, I always felt a deep divide between myself and my classmates. I was different, not just in the way I dressed, but in the way I lived my life. While other girls in my class talked about boys, music, and social media trends, I kept my distance, focusing instead on my studies and my responsibilities at home. My faith was my foundation, but it also isolated me. My friends were kind, but they didn't truly understand my way of life. I could see it in the way they hesitated to ask me to join them for outings, in the way they awkwardly changed the subject whenever conversations turned to dating or pop culture. I accepted this as my reality, believing that this loneliness was a necessary part of being faithful. But deep inside, I had questions I never dared to voice. Why did God feel so distant, so unreachable? Why did I constantly feel the need to prove my devotion? Why was my faith rooted more in fear than in love? I told myself that doubt was a test, something to overcome. So I buried it, convincing myself that obedience was all that mattered. That evening, I was exhausted after a long day of school and Quran studies. My mother had lit the fireplace to warm the house, and the golden glow of the flames flickered softly against the walls as we sat together in the living room. The scent of chai and cardamom filled the air, mixing with the subtle smokiness of the fire. My younger brother, Omar, sat on the floor beside me, completely engrossed in his toy cars, his small fingers moving them back and forth with playful determination. Everything about that night felt normal, peaceful even. I remember staring into the fire, watching as the flames danced and crackled. And then, for a brief moment, something strange happened. The fire flickered unnaturally, almost as if it had a mind of its own. It twisted and shifted in ways I couldn't explain, almost as if it were whispering, trying to tell me something. A sudden, eerie sensation crept up my spine, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. My chest tightened with unease, but I brushed it off, convincing myself that I was just tired, that my imagination was playing tricks on me. I curled up on the couch, wrapping myself in a warm blanket, and told myself I would only close my eyes for a moment. But exhaustion had a way of stealing time. One moment, I was staring at the fire, and the next, I was jolted awake by a deafening explosion. A violent, shattering sound filled the air, followed by the sharp, acrid scent of smoke. Disoriented, I shot up, my heart hammering in my chest. The living room was no longer the warm, peaceful place it had been just moments ago. Flames engulfed the furniture, licking hungrily at the walls and ceiling. The air was thick with black smoke, suffocating and blinding. My mother's voice pierced through the chaos, filled with terror. "Sarah, get up! We have to get out!" Omar was screaming, his tiny frame trembling in the haze of smoke. The sight of my little brother crying, coughing violently, filled me with panic. I tried to stand, to move toward him, but my body felt impossibly heavy. My vision blurred, my lungs burned, and every breath became a desperate struggle. The heat was unbearable, pressing against me from all sides like an invisible force. I could hear the structure of the house groaning, wood cracking under the pressure of the growing flames. My mother was calling my name over and over again, but her voice was growing distant, fading into the background like an echo from another world. I gasped for air, but there was none left to breathe. My chest tightened painfully, a crushing sensation spreading through my ribs. My legs gave out beneath me, and the world tilted. My heartbeat slowed, a strange, hollow sensation filling my body. And then nothing. At first, I thought I had simply blacked out. But as my awareness returned, I realized something was terribly wrong. The heat, the fire, the burning pain in my chest, it was all gone. I felt nothing. No weight, no sensation. Just an eerie lightness, as if I had been untethered from gravity itself. Slowly, I became aware that I was no longer on the floor of our burning home. I was floating, suspended in the air, completely detached from my body. Below me, I saw a sight that filled me with confusion and horror. My mother was kneeling on the floor, cradling my lifeless body, rocking me back and forth as she sobbed uncontrollably. Omar was crouched beside her, tears streaming down his tiny face as he clung to my unmoving hand. The living room was now filled with firefighters and paramedics. I watched as they checked for a pulse, their expressions grim. One of them shook his head. My mother let out a wail, so full of agony that it cut through me like a knife. I was dead, yet I was still here, still aware, still thinking. I felt no fear, no pain, just a surreal sense of calm. But before I could process what was happening, I was pulled away. A force beyond my comprehension yanked me from the scene, dragging me upward at an impossible speed. My home, my mother, Omar, all of it faded into a distant blur as I was sucked into a tunnel of darkness. The peace I had felt moments ago vanished, replaced by a chilling emptiness. This was not the warmth of sleep or the silence of unconsciousness. This was something else entirely. The darkness was alive, pressing in on me from all sides, stretching endlessly in every direction. There was no up, no down, no sense of time. Just void, a cold, merciless nothingness. My heart, or whatever part of me still existed, raced with terror. I called out instinctively, the words escaping my lips in a desperate plea. Allahu Akbar. Ya Allah, help me. Silence. No response. No warmth. No presence. Just an infinite void swallowing my cries. I called out again, louder this time, screaming for the God I had spent my entire life worshiping. But the only answer was my own echo, fading into the abyss. And then I heard it, a sound, faint at first, but growing louder. It wasn't words, but whispers, slithering through the darkness like unseen serpents. They twisted and coiled around me, unintelligible yet filled with malice. My body, or whatever I had left of it, shuddered as the whispers became voices, muttering in a language I didn't recognize. Shadows moved within the void, shifting and writhing, as if something was watching me from the depths. Then, without warning, a force yanked me downward. The whispers turned into screams, laughter, cries of agony. I saw figures, people reaching out, their faces contorted in torment. And with gut-wrenching horror, I realized what was happening. I was falling. I was falling into hell. I screamed, thrashing against the force pulling me downward, but it was useless. The weight of my life, my choices, my failures dragged me deeper and deeper. The figures in the shadows twisted and writhed, their distorted faces frozen in expressions of agony. I could hear their cries, some calling out for help, others screaming in torment, as though they had been trapped for eternity. The further I fell, the hotter it became. The suffocating heat pressed against me, yet there was no fire, only an overwhelming presence of suffering that seeped into my very being. The shadows lunged at me, their claw-like hands reaching for my soul, pulling at me as if trying to drag me into their torment. I closed my eyes, waiting for the inevitable, knowing there was nothing I could do to stop it. But then a voice, powerful, commanding, yet filled with undeniable love, called my name. Sarah! Everything stopped. The darkness recoiled as if struck by an unseen force. The whispers ceased, the wailing fell silent, and the force pulling me downward vanished. I was left floating in the void, trembling. The voice had not been loud, yet it had shaken the very foundation of this place. It was familiar, yet unlike anything I had ever known. Then light, a brilliant, blinding light erupted from above, piercing through the endless abyss. It was not just bright, it was alive, radiating warmth, love, and something I had never truly known before. It was a presence that filled every corner of my being, dissolving every ounce of fear within me. I turned my head slowly, and there he was. A man stood at the center of the light, wearing a simple white robe. His face was radiant, not with fire or power, but with an indescribable glow, a peace that surpassed all understanding. His eyes, deep, knowing, filled with boundless love, locked onto mine. And in that moment I knew. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I didn't need to question. Every fiber of my being recognized him instantly. It was Jesus. I was frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. My entire life, I had been taught that Jesus was a prophet, nothing more. A revered figure, but not divine. But standing before him now, all of those teachings seemed to crumble like dust. He was not just a prophet. He was not just a man. He was something greater, something beyond words. His presence radiated authority, yet there was no intimidation, no force. Only love. Tears welled in my eyes, though I did not understand why. It was as if every wound, every fear, every moment of doubt in my life had been laid bare before him, and yet he looked at me not with judgment, but with understanding. He reached out a hand, and the moment his light touched me, I felt it. Every burden, every weight I had carried my entire life lifted in an instant. The guilt, The shame, the fear, all of it was gone. I gasped, realizing for the first time what true peace felt like. It wasn't just an emotion. It was a state of being. "Sarah," he spoke again, his voice like a melody, rich with a love that surpassed anything I had ever known. "You do not belong in the darkness." I opened my mouth, but no words came. I wanted to ask him why I had been falling, why my prayers had gone unanswered, why I had felt abandoned in that moment. But he already knew my thoughts. He smiled gently, and with a single wave of his hand, the darkness around us vanished completely. Suddenly, we were standing somewhere new. A vast, open space filled with golden light stretched endlessly before me. It was unlike anything on earth. The very air shimmered with warmth and life. In the distance, I could hear the faint sound of music, not from instruments, but something else, something ethereal. It was as if the very light was singing, the sound wrapping around me in a comforting embrace. "This is only the beginning," Jesus said, gesturing to the space around us. I turned to him, the questions in my heart overwhelming me. Why was I falling? My voice trembled, thick with emotion. Why didn't Allah answer me? Jesus' expression did not change, but I could see sorrow in his eyes. "You have sought me, but you did not know me." His words were gentle, yet they struck deep. "You have prayed in fear, but I have called you in love." Tears spilled down my face. "I followed the rules. I obeyed. But you did not know me," he said again. "It is not the rules that save. It is the heart that seeks truth." A sudden realization washed over me, one that shook me to my core. I had spent my entire life trying to earn God's favor, trying to be good enough, yet I had never truly known him. My faith had been a list of rituals, a set of laws, a structure I followed out of duty, not love. But standing here, in his presence, I understood. He had always been calling me, not with force, not with fear, but with love. Then, Jesus lifted his hand, and a vision appeared before me. I saw humanity, billions of people from every nation, every background. Some were lost, wandering aimlessly, searching for something they could not find. Others were reaching toward the light, but were tangled in chains of tradition, unable to break free. And then I saw those who knew him, truly knew him. Their eyes were filled with light, their hearts radiant with peace. They were not bound by fear. They were not weighed down by guilt. They walked freely, unburdened, basking in the presence of the one who had set them free. "This is what I desire," Jesus said, his voice filled with longing, "that all would come to know me, not through fear, but through love." I fell to my knees, overwhelmed. What do I do? Jesus knelt beside me, lifting my chin so that I was looking into his eyes. "Go back," he said. "Tell them what you have seen. Tell them I am waiting." A deep sadness filled me at his words. "I don't want to go back." He smiled. "You must. There are many who need to hear. And you, Sarah, were chosen to tell them." I felt a sudden pull, a force I couldn't resist. The light around me faded, and Jesus' face grew distant. "No, wait, please," I cried, reaching for him. But it was too late. I was being pulled away, faster and faster, until I gasped, choking on air as my lungs filled violently. Blinding lights seared my vision, and I realized I was back. I was lying in a hospital bed, my mother clutching my hand, tears streaming down her face. The steady beep of a heart monitor echoed in the room. Nurses and doctors stood around me, their expressions a mixture of shock and awe. "She's awake," someone whispered. "She shouldn't be alive." But I had returned, and I knew my life would never be the same. The moment I woke up, I could still feel it. The warmth of his presence, the overwhelming love that had surrounded me. But now, as I lay there in that sterile hospital room, reality set in. How could I explain what I had seen? How could I tell my family, my friends, the world? For days, I wrestled with the weight of my experience. I tried to convince myself that maybe it had been a dream, that my mind had simply conjured something in the haze of unconsciousness. But deep down, I knew the truth. What I had seen was real. Jesus was real, and he had sent me back for a reason. When I finally gained the strength to speak, the first words I uttered to my mother were, "I saw him." She frowned, confused, brushing my hair from my face. "Who, my love?" she asked. "Jesus," I whispered. She recoiled as if I had uttered something forbidden. Her eyes filled with fear, then anger, then something even deeper, desperation. "Sarah," she hissed, "do not speak of such things." But I couldn't stay silent. At first, no one believed me. My family thought I had gone mad. My father refused to even look at me. My friends, the ones I had prayed with, the ones who had shared my faith, turned their backs on me. They called me a traitor, a liar. Some even said I had been deceived by demons. But I knew the truth. I had been lost in the darkness, and Jesus had pulled me out. He had shown me that faith was never meant to be a chain, but a path to love, to freedom. He had revealed to me that salvation was not something to be earned through fear, but something given freely through him. And now I have a message for you. I was sent back to tell you that he is real, that Jesus is calling each and every one of us to know him, not through empty rituals, not through fear, but through love. I was sent back to warn you that time is running out, that the world is growing darker, and that many are choosing to remain in the chains of deception. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you are watching this, and you have been questioning, if you have been searching for something more, if you feel a stirring deep inside your soul as you hear my words, do not ignore it. That is him. He is calling you. He has always been calling you. I do not share this story to convince you. I share it because I have no choice. I was sent back with a purpose, and that purpose is to tell you that he is waiting. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to earn his love. You only have to come to him. So I ask you now, are you ready? If you feel the pull in your heart, if you feel the presence of something greater, do not turn away. Call out to him. Seek him, and you will find him. The door is still open, but it will not stay open forever. If this testimony has spoken to you, if you feel something stirring inside of you, do not ignore it. Share this message. Comment below. If you are searching for the truth, open your heart and ask him to reveal himself to you. Because the truth is, he already has.